And the flat earthers came out in droves when I mentioned in a video about there not being a dome over the earth. And some of the more idiotic comments that I received, and I'm going to talk about at least 2 or 3 of them here. This one, first one, he got to be a Mason. Yes, I am a Mason. But in Masonry, we don't talk about whether or not the earth is flat or a sphere. It has absolutely nothing to do with Masonry. Although we do use the sphere as a symbol, I will grant you that one. But it's not a conversation that we have. Now, the other part of your statement about the fact that there are no satellites and that the whole world is connected through cables and cords, and that when you look at the GPS, you see the cars driving around with the cameras, and that's how we get our GPS images. Oh, all the 3 levels of hell. What are you talking about? So, first thing, let's understand this. Before the internet came out, before it came out in big droves, serving in the military, I personally have looked at satellite images of other countries when working with intelligence agencies in America and in other countries. And this is before the internet became a widespread thing. Okay, so we already had satellite imagery at that time frame. We also use sat phones, short for satellite phones, in order to communicate while you're on ship back to America and other ships and neighboring countries. We didn't use radio. When I would call my family, you get that like special time that you can call your family from a Navy ship. We use a sat phone system that allowed us to be able to connect with a satellite and speak to our families in the United States. We use satellites. And you are saying the GPS cars that drive around? Yes, Google Earth, they use those in order to get street level views. Because from the satellites, you can't get street level views. You can only get above views. So we can only see what's happening from above and not street level. That's a great thing that Google does, so you can see street level views. But you're saying that that's the only way, and it's all connected through cords and cables. And then as an IT guy, when I got out of the military, and I worked as an IT person in the IT field for a while, and yes, we had our T1 lines and things of that nature, but guess what? Those things kind of went out the window because we started working with the cloud, and we started working with satellite communications and satellite networking instead. And I actually worked for a company that put satellites up in the sky. That was the whole thing of the company. That's all the company does. And I had a guy who came into my cigar lounge who still works for a company that all they do is put satellites up in low orbit. So this comment was asinine, but let's get to the next. Now this guy, a little bit better, because he was saying that with all the gases that we have on the earth, you know, the oxygen, the nitrogen, and that sort of thing, that it has to have some type of container. Otherwise, it would just float off into space, as he said, the fictitious space, as he called it. And his example is that if you puncture a deodorant can, where does the gas go? For a second, I didn't even know what the hell he was talking about, because I haven't used aerosol deodorant since the 90s. But it came to memory, and I said, okay, he's talking about those. And here's the thing, my guy. If you punch the aerosol can, it stays within, although it leaves that container, it stays within the container of the Earth's atmosphere. Guess where all the gases on the planets remain? The container they remain in? The atmosphere. Let me put it in simple terms. When you're driving in a car, and this will also answer the person who said that they don't believe that the Earth is spinning at 1,000 miles per hour. Well, depending on where you are on the Earth, it has a different speed, but I get what you're saying. So this will answer both of those people at the same time. When you're driving in a car, if there's a fly in a car, if you have a ball, if you toss the ball up in the air, the ball stays with you, right? It doesn't go further in front of you or behind you. A fly can fly all throughout the car. Why? Because the fly is contained in the car, in the atmosphere of the car. And if the car is going 60 miles per hour, everything within the car is also going 60 miles per hour. Now, as soon as you open the window and the fly flies out, it goes flying behind you. Why? Because it lost that momentum of the 60 miles per hour. As soon as you toss that ball, and if it goes out the window, it goes back. Just like anything else that comes out of your car. You shouldn't be littering, and don't litter to test this. Do not litter to test this. But it all goes out back. Why? Because it left the environment, the atmosphere that is in the car that is containing it. Once it leaves that atmosphere, it is subject to whatever the greater atmosphere outside of it. So you can puncture the aerosol can, but that gas may leave the container of the aerosol can, but it still remains within the atmosphere of the earth. Now, if you go outside of the atmosphere of the earth, you have to contend with the atmosphere of space. And depending upon what bodies you're around, the different gravitational pulls, solar winds, all sorts of shit that's going on out in space, you are now subject to those things. So even though that was somewhat of a decent try, it doesn't work. And I don't follow my biblical people out there who like the flat earth thing. That whole story about the sun standing still, that would mean that the earth stopped rotating and everything would just smash all over the place. It'd be like a big worldwide hurricane going on at speeds that you couldn't even imagine. But let's say you was on a flat earth and the sun stood still. Why is it that nobody else in history anywhere ever reported that long ass day or that long ass night? You don't get that. You know why? Because it's a make-believe story. This is why I don't like dealing with flat earth, and this is why I won't deal with flat earth on a regular. But this is just sometimes y'all just get me all wound up about this whole flat earth thing. And then just because I mentioned the sun, let's think about this, flat earthers, people. If the sun, because I've been on a ship, and I've seen another ship go below the horizon, and when it does, if it was flat, the ship would just get smaller, right? You wouldn't see it sink into the curvature. You would see the same size ship and it just gets smaller and smaller, but you would see the top and the bottom. But no, that's not what happens when you're out at sea. You see the ship sink into the horizon. And if the sun if it wasn't on a spherical earth, when the sun rises, it wouldn't rise. It would start as a small dot, and the closer it gets to you, the dot would grow. You wouldn't see it coming out of the curvature and then descending on the curvature in the west. Same with the stars and the moon and everything else that moves in that same deals with a spherical earth. So, oh my gosh. Now this last person. Now Andrew tried to use a little bit of science here, and that's what I'm gonna give him. That's why Andrew get the clap, because Andrew used a little bit of science, but you're a little bit off on your science. He says that the reason why the sky is blue is because oxygen turns into a liquid at 185 and turns into a solid at 215. And this is Celsius. It's actually around 218 that it turns into a solid. And that's the blue that we see. It's solid oxygen up there because it's freezing at those temperatures so high in elevation. And that is the dome that is over us. But here's the problem. 78% of our atmosphere that we're breathing is nitrogen. Only 23% is actually oxygen. And since nitrogen freezes at 210, 8 degrees before then, 210. And when nitrogen freezes, it's more of a greenish color. It's a bluish green, but it's more green. We be looking up and we have a green sky or a greenish sky. So that kind of throws a monkey wrench in the whole theory that you have here. And that's the problem with the flat earth. It's all theory based on what somebody believed, based on a book from the Bible or the Chinese philosophers or some of the Greek philosophers who believed in the flat earth and thinking that they would fall off the edge, even though the overwhelming majority of people, even in all those societies, still knew that the earth was spherical and did mathematical calculations to know that it is spherical. I don't want to get into a whole flat earth thing because it's nauseatingly boring and idiotic to go through that debate. And at the end of the day, what does it change? What does it change? What would it change, really? Would it change anything in your life if all the governments of the world agreed and said that, hey, it's a flat earth? What would it really change? That's the biggest issue of why I don't do flat earth videos. because it doesn't change.